Hi, I'm Lita Leapins.
And I'm Jim Gordon.
And welcome to another edition of Our City Tonight.
Well, we're here at the home of our production partners, Hubcast Media, here in their studios in Vancouver.
And we have a packed show, so let's get right to Our City Tonight.
Well, it has been over a year since we last visited one of our favorite restaurants in downtown Vancouver. It is Multaka. We are here right now behind the bar with the owner, Mimo. And Mimo, time does fly, but it's great to be back with you in this wonderful restaurant.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, Multaka means meeting place in Arabic, and we love gathering here. It's always a safe, great environment to be at. We were going to jump right in. It's a two-part question for you. Tagines, those are kind of the stars of the restaurant. Mimo, tell our audience what a tagine is and let us know what your most popular tagine is.
Tagine signature dishes that we serve here. It's conical lid, makes the steam circulate, so everything we cook in it, it's tender, cooks to perfection, sauce like a demi-glace. We use lots of spices. Most popular tagine, I would say, it's lamb shank. Since we opened, we follow the same recipe with apricot and figs, 32 spices, super tender. You gotta come try it.
It's delicious. And jumping into your second star recipe dish is your flambe. And those are quite a crowd pleaser. Tell us a little bit about what makes yours stand out.
That's right. So the very popular dish, it's rack of lamb. Use springland and tamana rack of lamb, and flambe duck, venison. So we do tableside flambe and carving, baked to perfection, medium rare, medium, however you like it. Super popular. Come try it.
And there's a little secret to that, the cognac.
Oh, the cognac I flambe with, I infuse with spices. So when you get the cognac flambe at the end, you get the final touch of my spice on it. Just perfect.
We filmed here for the first time 2 years ago, and you were teasing me because I was a newbie to the Moroccan flavors and the food items you were putting out. You kind of schooled me on what I should sample first and with my limitations of what I can eat and not eat. For people that are watching that may want to try Moroccan food, give us a few samples of what they should start with first.
So they should definitely try the signature dish that's very traditional. It's pastilla. So right now we added to our chicken pastilla and vegetable pastilla we always had, we have seafood pastilla. Scallop, shrimp, whitefish, calamari, also on a display there. Very, very traditional dish and delicious.
And Mimo, you have lots of options for vegans, pescatarians, and so anyone can come in here and have a really great meal.
That's correct. Without garlic, gluten-free, vegan. We can cater to any dietary restriction, so feel free to ask.
And I like the fact I don't see one fryer in this place.
That's how it should be.
And we also mentioned all your meat is hormone-free, it's halal, it really is wholesome food. But the one thing we want to mention too is you are brilliant at matching your wines with the dishes. You have quite an array from all different countries.
All right, so with dishes we tried today, I would pair Santa Margherita Pinot Grigio with seafood pastilla, most definitely, with duck, Fontana Fredda Barolo, and rack of lamb with Chateauneuf de Pape. Those are the most popular, and always start with the champagne. So it's a Laurier
Which we clearly did, yes.
That's right.
Hey, one of the things we've been adding to these segments since last year, of course, is the safety element. We should talk a bit about the safety precautions you've taken. This is a small restaurant, but what have you been doing in terms of your tables and separating tables and all the precautions one must take?
So we removed a lot of tables, make sure they're 2 meters apart, and as our partition, we installed a nice Moroccan carpets, as you can see. So every part of the restaurant is its own little section, so when you're seated here, you're separated from everyone. And it's a small boutique restaurant, so you don't see crowds here, so you're always safe here. Sanitizing, cleaning, etc., like standard.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I want to mention too is when guests come, they get to see your art. Your art is prominently featured in all the booths all throughout the restaurant. You are a very talented artist.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I was just trying to shave every day during COVID. You're actually becoming an artist, so
Oil paint.
well done.
Thank you.
I lost the coin toss, so when we come back, we're going to talk. You mentioned lamb. We're going to talk with our friend Jeff Finn from Lamb to You about what he does with his lamb here at Multaka. That's coming up a little later in the show. Well, his career has lasted and continues over these last 6 decades. Movies, television, hosts of video shows back in the day, radio, print, podcasting. This guy has done it all and led the way for people like me. It's a great pleasure to welcome friend and media icon, I'll call him that, Terry David Mulligan. Welcome to our city tonight, pal.
Thank you, Jim. I'm exhausted just listening to the list of things.
You know what? You've done a lot. We could do a whole half hour just on you and all your career, but we're going to jump right in. You and I have had many discussions about your career. Let's go back to the beginning and talk about being in the right place at the right time, doing radio, and then it leads you eventually to Vancouver.
Well, I'm in Red Deer, Alberta, Olds and Red Deer, Alberta, and I'm a Mountie. I've been a Mountie for 3.5-4 years. Not a bad Mountie, not the best, but pretty good. I mean, it's pretty. You have to be a certain type of person to be a RCMP still to this day, and the training that they gave me is what where part of my work ethic comes from. Anyway, I'm listening to the radio, and all of a sudden, the British invasion shows up. The Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, and I'm drawn to the station. Like Hal Weaver, the disc jockey playing all this music, is Wolfman Jack. And I got to see where it's coming from. As soon as I see it, as soon as I see the station, I want to get my hands on the board and play that music. But I can't be a Mountie and a disc jockey, although I was for about 6 or 9 months. And eventually I phoned my father and said, Dad, I'm going to leave the RCMP. To do what? I'm going to be a disc jockey, Dad. And a couple of years later, he talked to me and recognized me as his son. He was very disappointed. And then off I went. I went Red Deer, Calgary, Regina, and then Red Robinson phoned and said, do you want to come home? And I said, yes, please.
Another legendary radio TV guy in this town. Hey, Terry, talk a bit about some of the people you have interviewed over the years. I've always been very proud of the people I've been lucky enough to meet, but I look at your portfolio and I'm talking about, like, briefly again about, interviewing and talking with people like Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and you're interviewing the Stones. Talk about your life in media in the 70s and 60s.
Yeah, actually, as we were doing it, I know I would have been excited. I was nervous to interview the Jimi Hendrix Experience, but I walked around town with Jim Morrison. We were looking for boots. And Janis and I, in order to interview Janis, you had to drink with her. And I'm 2 o'clock in the afternoon, bourbon or whatever she wanted to drink, because she was a nervous interview. You had to float that. And I just never kept any of the tapes, and I'm really bummed that I didn't. It was a way of actually connecting the audience to the person and showing the audience that these were real people, just like you and I. They weren't the heroes that they, the superstars that they made them out to be. So I just, listen, when I saw names pop up, and I said, let's go for it. And luckily, I got to do radio and television with the very best of what music gave us in the 60s and 70s. And actually, if you look back at it right now, we're celebrating 50-year anniversaries for incredible albums. And I keep thinking, was it really 50? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Hey, let's also talk about one of the things I've always admired about your career, and as I said at the beginning, that you were kind of a trailblazer for people like myself and some of our mutual friends in terms of, I remember you telling me one time a number of years ago, own your own stuff if you can, because you lose a gig and you might be out of work. Whereas if you're doing a diversity of things, and I said acting, radio, TV, writing, podcasting, you're the guy that kind of taught us all that you've got to do a lot of different things and try to own what you do.
It wasn't for everybody. I mean, somebody pulled the rug out from underneath me, and I swore up and down I would never, ever let any one person mess with my career and what I was doing. And so I decided to have multiple jobs, and that's what I did. And it felt reassuring to know that I always had something to fall back on. And still to this day, I'm doing 3 or 4 shows. as I'm slowing down. And basically, I'm glad that I was able to influence somebody, because it's a great way to go if you want to do that.
Yeah, no, that was a big mark on my life, and as I said, some of my colleagues that are in my age category have followed that and live by it. You're right; it's not for everybody. Hey, let's talk about you've been doing, as I said, a lot of stuff, but let's talk a bit about Mulligan Stew. You've been doing it for a long time, a radio show, but man, oh man, you get some great people on this show.
I do. I just had Elvis Costello on, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. I hadn't talked to him in 10 years or so. I'm always looking for singer-songwriters, complete people, who aren't created for us with producers and writers and posses of people. I want people who are actually I'm looking for honesty in music, and that leads me to people like Colin Linden, Colin James, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, Cord Blunt, lots of Adams initially. Brian Adams was just a straight up honest guy. This is what I'm going to do. If you want to help me along, fine. Otherwise, get out of the way. That kind of guy. I admired that. Hey,
listen, it's been great talking to you. I wish we could talk a little more, because there's so much more to cover. Get into the. Terry, I would love to. I would also like to tell our viewers out there to check out some of the stuff on YouTube and this guy's great career, including much music and the video hosting he did, and movie television, and some great clips of his movie work on TV.
If you just go to mulliganstew.ca, it will lead to all of that.
If you want to check, we'll have that email address and also his website and everything in our closing credits. TD, thanks for joining us. Much appreciate you joining us from Vancouver Island.
Thank you, James.
Talk to you soon, pal. She is an author, an educator, guest speaker, host of screening series on the history of fashion in film, and an expert for media organizations like, oh my goodness, my favorite channel, the Turner Classic Movies. Her new book is called Film Noir Style, The Killer 1940s. It is a great pleasure to welcome author and everything else she does, Kimberly Truler, who is with us right now, and I got her book right here. Oh, Kimberly, welcome to the show, and congrats on a great new book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Kimberly, the book is fantastic for people that love fashion, people who love film, but you really did, you cued in on 20 definitive film noir, iconic films, obviously, and the women involved that really, the fashion defined them, and I learned so much in regards to why the costuming was like it was. Tell us a little bit about that and the women that were involved in this genre.
That's a big question. I think a lot of the backstory is that World War II brought in rationing, and a lot of people aren't aware that rationing impacted fashion as well, the apparel industry. And so costume designers in Hollywood, though they had infinite resources, they really tried, especially in the world of film noir, to create costumes that both reflected what the mainstream America was wearing, as well as still provide some aspirational glamour.
And I love the fact that for all the glamour, people like Ava and Veronica Lake and Gene Tierney, Stanwyck, all those, the guys just, the trench coat becomes the thing. And it starts with Bogart at ground zero, according to you, and the Maltese Falcon.
Well, you know, it's interesting because for a long time, I always envisioned him in a trench coat and Maltese Falcon, and the trench coat doesn't really appear for Bogart until Casablanca in the following year. It's really Alan Ladd who breaks out the trench coat even earlier, but certainly Humphrey Bogart is the one with the fedora trench coat combo that basically becomes a uniform for all the leading men of film noir.
And Kimberly, your book is not only visually gorgeous, everyone should have this on their coffee table, but it also is, you really do, as they say, intellectually tackle the reasons why this genre was so popular and really did change the face of fashion for sure in Hollywood, well, around the world.
It did. I mean, the European couturiers, you know, basically got cut off from the rest of the world. About 60 of them stayed in business, but they were only able to sell to and promote to a lot of the collaborators of the Germans. So Hollywood became the source for trends in America and certainly around the world. And it had already been a trendsetter in the 1930s and even the early and late 1920s. But 1940s, it was all Hollywood.
And Kimberly, it's interesting. You mentioned in your book, and I didn't really know this, but you talk a bit about the Allies, the Western world comes out of World War II. There's this prosperity, but because these movies were made around the end of World War II, you get this period from the end of the war into the 50s where you think everything's great and prosperous, but these movies are flourishing, these dark, shadowy, black and white films, but audiences really got into them, yeah?
They absolutely did. I mean, one of the things you mentioned, the women in film noir, and, it's interesting to watch the backstory of women through the 1940s and how their roles evolved in the workforce, for example. And so the strong women that were throughout film noir, whether they were good girls or murderesses, they really signified a shift in women, at that time.
Kimberly, I love how the movies also take, in the beginning, the woman is very innocent, she's dressed very conservatively, and as they move through the films, standardly, she gets a little bit more edgy, as do the clothing. It's just stunningly done, and your book just outlines it so beautifully. So thank you for writing such an incredible book.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to hear that feedback. It makes me very, very happy.
Hey, we should mention, there's some great people that I'm glad that you like, as I said, I just, people out there look into Dick Powell and his work and Richard Widmark, and also a movie that I didn't really know a lot about actually before we go, Kimberly, and that is Wake Up Screaming, which is another one of those landmark movies that you mentioned. So there's so much out there, and we should say, Kimberly, we've got some copies of your book to give away. Lita, how can they win?
They can win by following us on either our Facebook page or our Instagram page and just write us a little message to say, I want to win film noir.
Kimberly Triller, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck. I know you'll be out on tour with that book once things get back to normal. And again, look for Film Noir on TCM, that great movie channel, every weekend. Kimberly, thanks.
Thanks for having me.
For those who regularly watch our show, you might recognize this gentleman, Jeff Thin, who is the owner of New Zealand Food Company. We are here at Multaka for our New Zealand Spotlight. And Jeff, why did you choose Multaka to showcase your beautiful lamb?
Thanks for the lovely intro there, Lita. I guess that the reason why we choose Multaka is because of the way that Memo's embraced the craft meat culture. I mean, you can see what he's delivered here today is exceptional.
Yeah, and your Tamana lamb, Tamana meaning food from heaven in Maori, what makes it so, and why is your lamb called Tamana?
So Tamana is exactly right. It's a Maori term that means food from heaven, and Tamana is from Alliance Group, who are New Zealand's largest owned farmer co-op with 5,000 farmer shareholders. Tamana's at the premium end of that product range where they have 5,000 farmers. Only 15 are able to grow the Tamana because of the strict conditions around the growing of this product. One of the main things, Lita, is that it's finished on chicory. So chicory is a herb, it's very expensive to grow. It doesn't grow for 12 months of the year, so production planning is quite difficult, and hence the product is scarce.
And your product is, well, your animals are grass-fed. That's a term that's bounced around a lot these days. For our audience, tell us a little bit about the specifics of what grass-fed means.
Well, it's definitely become a culture, grass-fed product, Lita, because people are becoming more conscious and concerned about where their meat is coming from and how that animal is fed. And I guess that with grain, there's no certainty around what has gone into that grain, whereas we're very fortunate that coming from New Zealand, everything is grass-fed, so we don't have any grain-fed beef, sheep or venison. Everything is grass-fed.
So Jeff, what makes Tamana lamb an extra premium product?
It's a limited amount of supply. There's not a lot of Tamana sheep available for processing. In fact, only 15 of our 5,000 farmers, I think I've mentioned that to you before, have the ability to farm Tamana. And that is largely down to the chicory that the sheep eat for the last 30 days of its life. And unfortunately, you can't grow it for 12 months of the year, so supply chain is very important. But what the chicory does is it gives the lamb the elevated levels of omega-3 and almost like a Wagyu taste flavour profile.
Well, we're back now with Mimo, who is the owner of Maltaka.
Great to be here with you, Mimo. And one of the great things from a supplier point of view to deal with Mimo is that he understands the story. He really appreciates that we're trying to control the supply chain from pasture to plate, and he prepares these delicious meals. What have you done here, mate? What's going on here?
Well, thank you, Jeff. The Tamana lamb is an excellent product to work with. It's a little bit bigger. It's better for me to make it medium rare, and I love flambeing it. It's rich flavor, goes well with my Moroccan spices, and pairs well with wine. It's been on the menu also with venison and duck and other dishes from Jeff, New Zealand company. Just an excellent product to work with. So if you haven't tried Tamana lamb, for sure come join us at Maltaka restaurant, and you might see Jeff here with me.
That would be a bonus for both of these gentlemen to be here. So we will be back here at Maltaka to wrap up the show later on.
This New Zealand Spotlight has been brought to you by the New Zealand Food Company, supplying lamb and venison products to Metro Vancouver restaurants. And by Lamb to You, offering Tamana lamb product delivery to homes in the Metro Vancouver area. Well, he's been part of the Vancouver media landscape for a number of years. He was part of City TV's stable of stars. He was part of the morning show for almost, 15 years, I guess. He is joining us now. Thor Dykau, who is now with Vancouver is Awesome. Buddy, it is great to have you on Our City Tonight.
Oh, thank you. I was part of that stable until they opened up the gate and they just let us all run free.
That's right.
Well, you landed on your feet quite handily, and you've got a great new gig at Vancouver's Awesome, the great digital platform. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, even though I've been watching already.
Well, I'm the video reporter for Vancouver's Awesome, their first ever, actually. And, they have a weekly paper. Well, we do, I should say, that's available for free, but moving a lot over to the digital realm, as many media outlets are. So I'm out there combing the city for various stories, hard or soft news. I like doing little feature things. I'm a big nature lover. And if there's anything big happening in the city, I'll be there to cover it.
You know, buddy, both of us and Lita too, we've been in the media a long time. The landscapes change, they shift, people come and go. One of the things I love about what you guys are doing at Awesome and what we've been trying to do on our show is to make sure we're covering the stories that, say, traditional media is not, due to just picking more stuff up off the wire. Talk a bit about what you've seen over the last 15, 16 years in terms of how things have changed and what we're all trying to preserve, what you do and what Lita and I do.
Well, there's been a huge shift. I mean, I grew up with Tony Parsons on BCTV, and there was so much local content being generated every day. There still is these days, but it's a lot harder to find. And when you've got these big media conglomerates that are outsourcing a lot of talent and material, it does get a little bit sanitized. And, a lot of the stories become sort of rip and read format, or you've seen it in other outlets, or you saw it earlier in the newscast, and they're just sort of recycling. So you have to really comb through things and look for original stories a little little tougher. It can be hard to find, but that's what we try to do. We try to generate our own stuff, and there is a plethora of stories every day in our city. You know, everything from controversial topics to water cooler chats, and people love talking about all kinds of things.
And Thor, all the stations years and years ago used to have a entertainment sort of style of doing all the interviews, getting public opinion out in the community, and it's non-existent anymore. So you're definitely taking up that, like we are with our show. Tell us what you're most excited about by being with Vancouver is Awesome.
Well, yeah, just getting the platform to be able to tell these kind of stories, whereas before at various other places, it might have been just like a press release that got, tossed in the deleted folder, the deleted item of your email folder, things like that. But now I have the opportunity to just grab my camera, go and cover something. If there's a new gallery or a new exhibition happening at a museum, I'm there to package it up. And people's attention spans have never been shorter. I mean, they want little minute and a half kind of videos. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, just letting people know what's happening in the city with a big focus on arts and culture and a lot of hard news stories that matter to people, because those are often what will get the most reaction and gets people talking and helps to share the content.
Pal, it's good to have you on the show. I tell people, and I tell Lita that I spent more time in dark theaters with you from the early 2000s up until a couple of years ago. I qualify by saying we were both full-time film critics, but Lita said it. We're really happy for you that you're in this new platform to showcase what's going on around the city. I would imagine you're also happy to be sleeping in, because I know you spent a lot of years getting up, probably around 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd see you rush out from evening screenings. So I wish you the best of luck, as does Lita, and to you and your lovely, lovely children. And people can find you. Vancouver's Awesome. We'll have all the Thor's details in the closing credits of our show. Thank you, Thor.
Hey, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, and we'll talk soon.
Well, we're back here at Multaka to wrap up this week's episode of Our City Tonight.
But before we go, we want to say, please catch all past episodes of Our City Tonight on our YouTube channel. Plus, we certainly look forward to having any comments, ideas sent to any of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
It's Our City Tonight, and I'm Jim Gordon.
I'm Lita Leapins.
We'll see you on the next edition of Our City Tonight. Outdoor wear for Jim and Lita provided by Helly Hansen, alive since 1877.
Youngblood Mineral Cosmetics provided by Soluzione Spa Products.